Hi, I'm Tom Finn, an executive coach and consultant for Suntiva. I'm here to talk to you about my background and experience, my approach to coaching, and to talk to you a little bit about what you might think about when you think about choosing a coach. I've been working in the field of organizational development and coaching this year coming on 30 years. Some of my customers include the Weather Channel, E-Trade, and NASCAR on the private sector side. On the public sector side, various organizations within the Food and Drug Administration, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the IRS, and the Department of the Navy. I'm also an author. I've written a book called Are You Clueless? The gist of the book is that we're all clueless to those who are different from us culturally, and that we can benefit and create partnership and productivity by looking at the differences in culture of the people that we work with and our own preferences as far as the cultures we grew up in. I've also had coaching experience in practically all levels of organizations, on the private side with CEOs and vice presidents, and on the public side with office heads, division directors, branch chiefs, and project managers. Suntiva is asking you to make a choice, and so I thought it would be useful for me to tell you a little bit about what's distinct in my approach so you can have a good sense of me versus the other folks that you'll be looking at. So there are three things that I think of that are distinct about my approach to coaching. First is that I look at systems thinking, and I share some of the dynamics of systems thinking with you. That's because you don't work in isolation. You work with a number of people, whether they're in a project team or in a larger organization. And so we need to know how you can best influence within an organizational system. So you need to know what some of the dynamics of systems are that you can influence. An example that I can share very simply, it comes from an old expression. Anxiety breeds anxiety. If you think about what's going on in the workplace today with all the reorganization, with managers rotating constantly, and with a lot of pressure and overload for many, many industries, there's a lot of anxiety-provoking kind of situations. So if you insert more anxiety into that system, you're going to make things worse. We know that leader behavior is contagious. So one of the things that you can do is insert a non-reactive, non-anxious presence. Now that sounds very simple, but it comes from knowing what's going on in systems, and there are many more dynamics that we can look at in our coaching to help you. The second part of my approach that I think is distinctive is that I look at patterns. Now that may be similar to a lot of other coaches, but I think mine is distinct in the way that we do it. You're an effective person, an effective leader at this point, or else you wouldn't be in this situation of selecting a coach. So we're not doing remedial work here. What we're looking at is, what do you do in certain situations, and is it working for you or not? And then what I do is I ask, is that pattern familiar? Does it go back to something you learned in your family, or in school, or in your neighborhood, or in an old workplace? Why do I do that? Because those patterns could be hot-wired patterns that stick. And what we need to find out is, they worked in that situation. Are they useful now when you want to scale up to perhaps some bigger challenges? The third aspect of my approach that I think is distinctive is that I share with you my experience of you in the moment. We do real-time feedback in our coaching sessions. Why is this useful? If I experience you in a particular way, whether it's something I feel in my gut, whether it's words you use or things that I notice, it's likely that your coworkers, your managers, or the people you're trying to influence experience you in a similar way. So it's useful for me to give you that feedback. The difference is in a coaching situation is I will give you that feedback. It will be direct. And I think a lot of people crave that in the workplace but don't often get it from their coworkers or their manager. So the three aspects that I would sort of summarize for me that I think are distinctive are, we look at systems thinking, we look at what your patterns are and whether they revert back to an earlier time in your life, and I give you real-time feedback of my experience of you. Now, what would a typical coaching session look like? For me, I think typically there are 4 steps. The first is What's the situation that's challenging? What is it that you want to improve? And we look at what are the details. You tell me exactly what's happening in that situation. Then secondly, I'll say, what is your pattern? What do you typically do? What's chronic in your reaction to that behavior? Thirdly, then we go back to what I was saying earlier. We look at, is that pattern something that's familiar? Something you've picked up earlier in your life? And then the last thing we ask is, the fourth step, is it working? Or is it something that you need to shift? The notable aspect of that, I think, that's distinctive is that third step. Is it something that goes back a ways and that is a habit? And then coaching is a useful way to look at habits and see whether there's something that you might want to shift or expand. There's a gold mine there in the looks back at what might be familiar. So, what to look for when you try to evaluate a coach? I think of two things. One is there fit and chemistry? So obviously you're looking at this video right now to get a sense of me and to understand whether you might feel comfortable in working with me. And you'll do the same with the other coaches as well. I think this is essential, looking at who you're comfortable with, right? But secondly, I also would ask you to take a look at who might stretch you. Is there something that you pick up where you say, this person might push me a little bit? Or is there something in their background or their approach that you think, I'm a little uncomfortable with that, but maybe it'll be something that will push me in the direction I want to go? So think about fit and chemistry, and also think about, is there someone who might be able to challenge you a little bit? So in conclusion, I wish you good luck with making your choice. I'm sure that whoever you pick, you'll come up with a good coach, knowing my colleagues. Have fun with this.